rise for the pledge. Thank you. Ms. Griffin, can we have a roll call, please?
Here.
Megan Doyle.
Here.
Andrew Fowler.
Here.
Emily Souza.
Here.
Betsy Ratner.
Here.
Linda Petrosky.
Here.
Sydney Wolf-Boynton.
Here.
And Susan Glennon.
I am here, and can we just make sure the record shows that Ms. Petrosky is virtual? Moving on to student reports, I think Jonathan Long goes first this evening. You have Jackson Butters and David King. Looks like you're solo though.
Thank you, meeting board members. It's a pleasure to be with you once again for another review. As you can see, on the notes tonight, my counterpart Aiden had an interview with Econ. He's hosting his final decision on the school, so hopefully that will help him make his decision. As always, let's start with some amazing news. Specifically, I would like to highlight the incredible accomplishments of our key club this past weekend because they participated in the New England District Conference in Massachusetts. Members and officers were awarded third, second, and first place 3 different times in 5 different individual competitions. Most notably, however, the club earned the Distinguished Club Award, awarded to the 3 most distinguished clubs in New England. And lastly, Caroline Doyle, a junior and team up officer, was elected the governor of the New England District and will oversee all key clubs in New England. In academics, our business and marketing students took a field trip to the Sound Tigers Hockey Stadium to hear from experts in sports marketing. Our new Future Business Leaders of America chapter has since competed at a state FBLA competition and 4 students qualified for a national competition after finishing the top 3 of their respective categories. Students in marine science classes will be visiting maritime aquariums to receive first-hand lab experiences in professional settings. Alongside the opportunity to work in the lab, students will also receive instruction from able behaviorists to learn about many different species that aquarium cares for.
The drama production held its first in-person performance in 3 years this past weekend, which turned out to be a huge success for the drama club. And finally, the internship program coordinators are completing one-on-one meetings with senior students regarding their site selection and plans to begin internships in May. This year looks like it'll be the most exciting one now that students are back in person for internships. In law sports action, spring sports have been off to a great start. Basketball picked up their first win, where brothers Jaden and Declan Waiwoda pitched a combined no-hitter against Manhattan.
The softball team started the season with a 2-1 record and looks to keep things going in 2 games this week. Girls lacrosse won a 98 thriller against Lyman Hall in their first win. Boys and girls outdoor track are both 2-1 with wins against Lyman Hall in the stadiums last week.
Golf has also started the season with a 1-1 record, while both tennis teams have picked up their first wins where they hope to keep their series hot streak alive. In school counseling and college and career, during the month of April, approximately 15 colleges plan to visit the College and Career Center to meet with sophomore and junior students. This is a chance for underclassmen to begin the process of exploring post-high school options ahead of the regularly scheduled fall visits. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all, and look forward to speaking with you next.
Thank you. Have you made your college decision?
I will actually be attending University of Pittsburgh this fall. So.
Now we have foreign, David Gaetano and Arzu Gezag.
Hello everyone, I'm Arzu Gazog and I'm here again to speak to you with David Gaetano and represent Foreign High School. We're so excited to be here and speak in front of you tonight and share all that's been happening in our school recently. First, we would like to mention some of our recent athletic successes. As spring sports begin, many of our teams are off to strong starts. Boys lacrosse opened up their season with a 16-7 win over Lyman Hall. Boys track won against both Guilford and Cheshire in their tri-meet, and softball won against Lyman Hall with a score of 9-2. Girls tennis also opened their season with a win against Platt Tech this past week. Senior lacrosse captain Mia Williams and senior softball captain Morgan Wieselman were both honored as Athletes of the Week this week for their outstanding performance in both of their respective wins. Speaking of foreign softball, the team is partnering up with Law Softball to fundraise for the Danny Kemp Cancer Support Fund. They'll be selling t-shirts and having a fundraiser game on May 16th where they play on the Daniel Kemp Memorial Field. We look forward to this event and many more, and are excited to see how the sports season progresses. In terms of academics, many classes have taken advantage of fun, interactive learning opportunities. Students in Mr. Phelan's World History class began learning about the strategies and types of warfare used during World War I this week, using their desks as barricades to replicate what guerrilla warfare would be like. In a similar light, AP Psychology students learned about the concept of social facilitation as classmates took turns competing against each other in a pressure-packed game of operation. In the technology department, students visited Porter and Chester Institute, as well as Housatonic Community College, to explore much of the work that they do on a greater scale. While visiting, they ran into 3 foreign alumni. Lastly, students in chemistry modeled polarity and intermolecular forces by examining the interactions between Alka-Seltzer, water, and oil. Since soap interacts with both soap and water, we added soap and modeled the interactions of soap mixing the oil and water after. I'd like to hand the discussion off to David.
Thank you, Arzu. I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about music and art in our school recently. Like Jackson was saying, our school too did have a very successful show this past weekend. Our drama club performed very well, and we had a successful showing of Mamma Mia. We'd also like to acknowledge many of the awards that our students have received in art and music in the past few weeks. Students Delaney Mainville and Bianca Torres were awarded the 2022 Connecticut Association of Schools Visual and Performing Arts Award. This award is to honor 2 outstanding high school students who excel in the visual performing arts. Bianca received her award for Outstanding Visual Arts, and Delaney received her award for Outstanding Performing Arts. Also in the realm of art, artists Bridget Sawitsky, Alina Sayal, and Cadence Wise have artwork selected to represent Florent High School in the 2022 Southern Connecticut Conference Annual Art Show, which we would like to congratulate them on. The music department has also had some representation this week, as 3 students from Florent participated in the Connecticut Music Educators Association All-State Festival over the weekend. Sophomore Olivia Salai, alto, junior Noah Held, bass clarinet, and sophomore Ryan Perviance, bass. In general, for news, however, our students are preparing for upcoming dances and events. Juniors are looking forward to their semi-formal on April 29th, and seniors are looking forward to their prom on May 20th. All students, however, have been looking forward to the Spring Pep Rally, which is to be held later on this week. Along with Spirit Week, also this week, each day, each class is participating in different challenges to see which class comes out on top at the end of the week. We look forward to the many fun events at the Pep Rally, such as Pie Teacher and Teacher Relay Races. Both the Future Business Leaders of America and Foreign Key Club have been hard at work recently. FBLA recently participated in a competition and were very successful in their work. Senior Daniela Rivera placed first place in public speaking. Elizabeth Tran, Vizela Martinez Cruz, and Gabriela Gallardo placed first place in the business plan, and McGuire Casey and Brian Wilcox placed third in sports and entertainment marketing category. Key Club also has been very busy this weekend with their officers attending their district convention known as DCON this weekend. Key Club officers participated in workshops with other Key Club across the New England and Bermuda districts, learning how to make the club at the best it can be. They were first honored with a first place prize in membership development in the Platinum Division, which is the largest of all Key Club divisions, making this a very prestigious accomplishment. They were also awarded a third place prize in the District Project Award, showing that all of our students' hard work and dedication throughout the year truly pays off. Again, Arzu and I would like to thank you all, members of the board, for allowing us to share the amazing things going on in our foreign community, and we look forward to having the opportunity to speak on our school's behalf again. Thank you.
Thank you, students. David and Arzu, have you committed to a school for next year yet?
I'm going to Yale next year.
Nice.
I'm going to Harvard next year.
Good for you. Nice job, the 3 of you. Thank you for coming tonight. Feel free to depart. Feel free to head out. All right. I don't see any members of the public here this evening. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment? I'll just ask. And seeing none, I'll dispense with the public comment statement. Moving on to the chair's report. I want to apologize to Ms. Alling. We forgot you during roll call. This is your first business meeting, so let the record please show that Catherine Allen is here. Thank you. We promise not to do that again. So as many of you do know, Holly Mulrenan has been appointed to fill the aldermanic seat left open by the passing of Marty Hardiman. So as such, she has resigned her seat on the Board of Education, and in accordance with board policy, nominations to fill the vacancy will be made by Ms. Mulrenan's 3rd District party members and then voted on at a future meeting by the majority vote of the remaining elected members of the board. So we'll see that on a future agenda. And I want to inform board members formally and members of the public that might be watching, a decision has been made to return to our boardroom effective with the April 25th Committee of the Whole meeting. Our boardroom is located at Parsons Complex. It's been over 2 years since we've met in that space, and it will be nice to get back home. I do want to thank the Jonathan Law staff and the high school at large for taking such good care of us over the last several months, for welcoming us into your community, and for all the hard work that it took to set up the space for us. We truly, truly appreciate it. We will also make sure that our agendas have a reminder to be mindful of symptoms. COVID is still among us, and we want everyone who might be showing any symptoms to stay home. So we can accommodate board members via a virtual attendance if you need to. Moving on to liaison reports. Does anybody have any liaison reports tonight? Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. At the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee met on March 24th. You'll see some of the motions later in this on our agenda tonight concerning the completion of some projects, but one of the major things that came out was that the Board of Aldermen assigned the Joseph A. Foreign roof project to the committee, so I'll be reporting on that in the upcoming months. We'll be selecting an architect at some point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Any other liaison reports from board members? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to superintendent's report. Dr. Kutaya.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn, and thank you, members of the Board of Education. We're happy to bring to you an instructional highlight that focuses on science. We've been talking about science for many years, about our hopes and dreams, and thanks to your support and the support of this community, those dreams are coming true in our classroom. So actually, we're taking advantage of bringing the classroom to you this evening. So we're going to hand things over to Dr. Fettigan and her team at this point.
Try again. Oh, I was going to say, otherwise I could use my middle school cafeteria voice if I need to. Okay, thank you, Dr. Kutaya. Good evening, members of the board. First and foremost, I'm so delighted to have with us tonight instructional supervisors of STEM, pre-K or preschool through grade 5, Dr. Tom Nobley, supervisor for our 6-12 set, Mrs. Lisa Swanson. We're also joined by 2 of our elementary STEM educators. So happy to have them here with us tonight. We have Betty Cragen and Deb Rogers. You know, board members, from the agenda form that was shared with you all about the NGSS standards, but for the benefit of the public, I just want to, anybody watching, remind everybody that those are the standards that are helping our school districts to identify science and engineering practices, those cross-cutting concepts, and the really important content for our learners to grab hold of in their preschool through grade 12 experiences. And those standards have required a shift in our curriculum, our instructional practices, our assessment practices, and most assuredly the professional learning that we offer the adult learners in our system. And that's where our STEM educators have really, alongside our instructional supervisors, been really critical in our growth that Dr. Kutaya was talking about in realizing our dreams in the area of science education for our young people. Tonight, you'll certainly see through the demonstration, a demonstration, I'm sure, of high quality instructional practices. We're intending to bring that to life for you. And you might recall that we came before the board in 2019 for our board members that were here then, or anybody that looks in the archives for a previous instructional highlight. And during that time, we were setting out a roadmap, again, like Dr. Kutaya was saying, of what we're envisioning and dreaming for science instruction in Milford Public Schools. So tonight, we're going to give you an update in those main areas of curriculum, instruction, assessment, and professional learning, and then we'll be able to take questions at the end. So at this point, I'll turn it over to our 2 instructional supervisors and our 2 STEM educators.
right, so we are going to talk a little bit about, as Dr. Fettigan alluded to, what we've been able to do since the last time we talked to you a little bit about, again, what we were planning for and our hopes and dreams for our science experiences for our students pre-K-12. This is actually a slide from 2019, believe it or not. And again, one of our main goals at that time was to create a through line through all of these different things in our work. So the next generation science standards, making sure that our curriculum instruction was anchored to those, but also ensuring that the experiences and the lived instruction that our students were getting was aligned to our model of high quality instruction in service to our vision of a learner, which is an internal kind of guiding force for us in MOFA in terms of beyond the standards, what else we want our students to become as they journey through the schools with us. So as Dr. Fettigan alluded to, we're going to talk about 4 mile markers on that journey and where we are in our work with those, and then at the end allude to kind of what our future destinations and what's on the horizon for us. We'll talk a little bit about the curriculum work that we've been able to accomplish to date, instruction and assessment, and give you actually a little taste of what that looks like live and in person, our learning environments, and then of course our professional learning that we're able to give our wonderful teachers to serve our students. So since our last update, we have rewritten curriculum. We have new units of study, K to 8, and working on pre-K right now in conjunction with Liz Gaffney, our early childhood supervisor. So all new NGSS aligned units that are also again aligned to our instructional model for our model for high quality instruction and vision of a learner. At the middle school, some new units in the areas of living earth and chemistry and earth science. And then at the high school, and I know Ms. Swanson can certainly answer questions about this later on, we have a lot of new courses and electives that we were able to offer in the area of sciences, such as forensics, for instance. So we're excited to be able to offer some different types of courses to our students and really serve a wide variety of scientific interests. So in terms of our instruction and assessment, we talked about this again when we kind of paved the way for this journey. We're really looking to move from learning about to that figuring out shift. So we're engaging our students in a hands-on investigations regularly to think about, ask questions, and investigate scientific phenomena that they may encounter in their world. And through that, kids are able to work collaboratively. We have kind of built-in, embedded performance assessments, because really the doing of science is what we're trying to highlight and what we want kids to be engaged in. So they have opportunities to test their hypotheses, plan investigations to solve problems that they're interested in, both on the science end and engineering end. We really have put a big focus, of course, not only on figuring things out and answers, but what are the questions that we want to ask, and really putting an emphasis on being curious, especially in our younger elementary learners, as we'll demonstrate in a little bit, and really being and really nurturing and catering to that natural curiosity that we all have. Again, I know a couple years ago, Dr. Kataya said that would be the last time that we use any stock photos of our students engaged in science. And so all of the photos that we've put throughout this presentation are our actual Milford Public Schools students engaging in various science activities and instructional routines throughout the day. So no more stock photos, and we really had so many to choose from. So again, another picture of some of our older students, and really dissection is back at the high school. So it really gives that hands-on learning a new meaning. And then again, talking about really that student-driven and owned instruction. So students are thinking about what are the scientific questions they want to investigate, how are they going to investigate them, what types of data do they need to collect. So they're planning those investigations. So again, gone are their days of, here's the cookbook lab, everybody followed the same exact instructions, here's the answer you should get, if you don't get that, you did it wrong. But instead, engaging kids with an interesting question or phenomenon and asking them, so how is this happening, why is this happening, and then helping to support them in designing their own investigations, experiences, and questions to facilitate them coming to that understanding, and then sharing that, whether it's through a scientific model, or a summary table, or a driving question board, or some of the other things that you will see throughout all of our science classrooms, whether it's kindergarten or high school. And at this time, I'm going to ask two of our STEM educators here who have graciously offered to give a bit of a hands-on, a little taste of the types of experiences that our students are getting. And so I will introduce at this time Betty Cragen and Deb Rogers, two of our wonderful STEM educators, to take you through a little hands-on demo of what our students are able to experience. Thank you.
So good evening, and first I'd like to engage you. I'm Betty Cragen, by the way. I'm going to ask you for a moment to look at your tables, and you'll see we've put some dyed pasta pieces on your table. Please take a moment and play with it. Look at it. See how pretty it is. And what we as STEM educators see, you may see a piece of pasta. What we see is a creative hook to engage every student in that classroom in the skills of observing, taking some time to observe, maybe the different colors, maybe the different shapes and sizes, and then asking them to classify the pasta in wherever ways they make sense to them. So I guess, again, making sure that learning is created by them. They're creating their own investigations. And then bringing it home while they're having pasta for dinner. Mom and Dad say, "What'd you learn today?" Nothing. Well, yeah, you did learn a little bit. You learned about the texture of the different pieces of pasta. So bringing that science home is really what we're excited to create for our students. And I can't stay behind the microphone, but when you see these things here, for example, a second example is you see a piece of laminate, right? You see a piece of cardboard, and you see a piece of fabric. But again, what a first grader will tell you they see is, through their process of an investigation, that, Mrs. Cragen, this is transparent. And this piece of cardboard is opaque. Vocabulary that surprise us, that first graders can understand and begin to have discussions with each other in the classroom setting as they are investigating what pieces of material block light or let light through. It's really amazing to see them in action, these little first graders saying, transparent or translucent. It blows our minds, for sure. And now we have something a little bit more hands-on for you to enjoy. Deb?
Hi there, I'm Deb Rogers. I'm the STEM teacher at Orange Avenue. Thank you for having us, and thank you for bringing the STEM labs in. It's not only exciting for us, but when the kids come in and they're so eager to be there and they ask me in the hallway, "Do I have STEM today?" I'm like, I don't know, check the schedule. It is so exciting for them. So what I'm going to show you today is how we're integrating technology on a regular basis and aligning it with the NGSS standards. So we're going to wheel out some carts, and what we have, it's called the Makey, where students are creating the complete circuit, and it's aligned with our 4th grade curriculum, tied into the energy unit, and it's not just an art project and it's not just a fun little tool, but they have the opportunity to explore how a complete circuit works. And as they explore through their different investigations, sometimes it doesn't work, so they have to problem solve and figure it out, and how do we get it to work. Sometimes they figure out, oh, my circuit isn't connected, or maybe the material I'm using is not conductive. Another showcase I have out is printed 3D printer buildings that my 5th graders have worked on. They had to design the city of New Orleans, they had to find historic landmarks, They printed the historic landmarks, and then we kind of flooded them because we had to see what's happening in New Orleans, and we tied it into their Earth Systems unit on why is the city of New Orleans being affected by these extreme storms and situations. So bringing in the tech with the 3D printers also tied into really an incredible unit on what's happening to the world around us. So I'm not going to talk anymore. We do invite you to come over and try these out. The bongo bananas are kind of fun, and the Play-Doh piano. We'll be there to kind of show you quickly, but if you want to come check them out, please do. And oh yeah, these are all student created. No adults involved, except for maybe a little tech help.
Well, that's kind of a tough act to follow. It is so nice to be back with you again. I'm Lisa Swanson, the secondary STEM supervisor. So I'm going to talk about learning environments. So as you can imagine, and you heard Deb say thank you so much for putting in those STEM labs into our elementary buildings. So the space is important that we learn in. And by supporting that, we've been able to provide these classrooms where kids can go and be scientists and not worry about getting a little messy. Sometimes science can be a little messy, and it's really hard to transition in that elementary classroom to all of a sudden go ahead and go grab those books after we've been digging in Play-Doh and there's Play-Doh pieces around, right? So just for that reason alone is one of the great reasons. But also that this has provided an opportunity for our kiddos to go to a space where they know that they can be scientists. Our teachers can sign up to take their kiddos in there if they have some fun things they want to do. And it's already filled and stocked with resources to try and experiment. So if a kiddo comes up with an idea, most likely they can look around the room and the Play-Doh is there and the circuits are there. They don't have to go dig in. Before, we were restricted to a kit that arrived, right, and it was limited as to how that kit could be used within that unit. So if they had some kind of creative idea, you didn't necessarily, you might have had the resources, but it was a might have, not a guarantee necessarily that that room would be filled with the necessary resources to possibly explore something that maybe we didn't anticipate within that unit. So that's another great reason to have those wonderful science labs in our elementary classroom, or in our elementary buildings. Additionally, of course, we have an opportunity there to have the space and the tables and just a different structure that helps support our scientists as they learn about different science concepts. So I forgot to put the slide deck one, or maybe not, maybe I didn't forget, maybe it just didn't move. Usually, yeah, oh, now I had way too much fun. Okay, we're fine, right? Oh, I skipped over the cute. They were really cute, though. Did you see all those little? Yeah, you guys have a copy of this, right? Right? Did you see those pictures? I mean, they're just great. As you can see, we had a lot of fun collecting images, but we really wanted to get you to kind of feel like you knew exactly what it was like to walk into one of these classrooms. So we had adorable kids playing with some different materials. And then, of course, as we move up the spectrum into our secondary classrooms, where we've had science labs operating in the past, but we've thought about new furniture, right? So instead of having that college-style desk where you sat in it and the desk and the chair were attached, we've been slowly but surely, especially as we're coming out of our COVID protocols, having some mobile pieces, trapezoidal desks where we can create collaborative groups. We have desks, here's an example of desks that have whiteboard top, so the kiddos can write and do their modeling right on a desk as a group looking over that. We have some example of the amazing 21st century equipment that we've been purchasing. We've got mini PCRs. We all know the word PCR, I think, now because of current times, but this is really a replicating machine, so it can take a small sample of DNA and create copies of that DNA so that we can explore different experiments with that. And you see an example of kind of that setup with our Chromebooks, the mini PCR, which really is mini. It's only about this big. It's a really tiny piece of equipment. And then we also have this amazing vernier equipment that we're using in our physics classrooms to really simulate some of those crashes that might happen, what is momentum, and really get concrete examples. And the nice thing, in the old days, you had to kind of have a car and they'd have a ramp and somebody would have a timer, and the data might be a little skewed depending on the skill set of how well we were doing the timing. This automatically connects right to their Chromebook. They hit a button, somebody says go, they let go, they hit a button on the Chromebook, the car slides down the ramp, and immediately they get a graphical analysis of what just happened. And they have certain factors they can then pull off and start to do that data analysis after a few experiments. So those are really exciting pieces in our classrooms. And as you can see, a science lab looks a little different than the days when I was in there as a student, but really encouraging that collaboration, because we have to have the equipment, we can't ask them to collaborate and then have them stuck in these hard to move desks that really are not flexible at all. And of course, none of this happens. None of this could happen. And this was during a pandemic. So I also want to mention that this has been a heavy lift for us because we've been in situations where we've asked students to not. So we're excited. You saw the smiles on those kids' faces doing dissections because protocols restricted us from being able to do that work. So they are so excited to be back to hands-on learning and working together. We couldn't do some of the labs. You can't have all these things individualized for every single student. We would break Jim's bank real fast. But we've been able to get back into group work, and none of this happens without the support of professional learning. And the wonderful thing that I am so honored and privileged to work in a system that truly believes in that proactive approach of having educators working alongside our teachers. So our new STEM educators in each building helping to lift that work with our classroom teachers. You accelerate the learning of a classroom teacher the second you put somebody whose their only job is to think about that. So when they have a question, they have the time to react, research, maybe process that with you. And then we also have our STEM teacher leaders at the secondary level, who again are that expert that they can reach out to for an instructional. I'm trying to figure this out. Like when we were doing those vernier probes, they're brand new. We have to learn how to use them. To have somebody who's willing to kind of research and do that extra digging. Teachers have so much on their plates for planning and grading and looking at student work and thinking about feedback, so that having those professionals alongside of them is such a privilege and honor in this district, and we are so thankful that we get that kind of support. So additionally, besides our on-site professional developers, we've also been working with, of course, outside contractors. So the vernier equipment, we were able, because we purchased that, we were able to have our teachers. I love this tweet from Tracy Turcott, who's a science teacher here at Jonathan Law. When we were learning about the mini PCRs, and she was tweeting about, like, they had a crime scene that they had to figure out. Even the teachers were having a great time. I walked into that room and the buzz of their learning was just phenomenal. They were all talking like, who's who, and they're standing in front of the thing looking at different things. They've got their cameras, taking pictures of everything that they're doing. It was so awesome. We also have worked with Open Sci Ed, which is so it's an open resource that's been nationally developed, aligned to middle school standards. And it's wonderful that they also have facilitators that came in and worked with our middle school teachers right at the beginning of the school year before school even started. They came in to really show them the unpacking and the thinking and how and why those units are developed very differently than any typical science we've ever experienced in our entire lives. How they use phenomena-based approach, how they have specific routines, and it really helps escalate, again, the learning of all of our teachers, especially when we're trying to raise our practice and elevate and align to HQI. You just saw an example of Makey in action. There was some training for that. We work with our partners at Autobahn, and we have provided a lot of unit unpacking sessions. That's when our teachers come together, look at the unit implementation guides, start to problem solve, start to think of how these resources will work with kids, and do some co-planning together. It's a wonderful opportunity that we value so much. And here we have some pictures of our adult learners in action. So this is the road that we've been traveling on, and we're very excited to be in the place where we're at. Tom and I when Dr. Fettigan asked us to do this, and we started to make a document of like celebrations, and there was so much to celebrate. Even though we've been in the midst of a pandemic, our teachers have moved incredibly to try and really change and shift our science education. That it's really about problem solving and figuring out what to do when you don't know what to do, and thinking and being curious about how things interact with each other. Why does that circuit work if I touch it, and why does it not work if I don't touch it? As my education, I would have been told why it all happened and just like told to memorize all the parts of the circuit and all the formal definitions, which is absolutely not what we want our learners doing. So we have more, though, to do. We want to continue to integrate technology. You know, I am fortunate to have a senior in high school. I am joyously visiting college campuses. He happens to be a science kiddo. And just looking at new lab spaces at these universities is amazing to see that they have data trackers. And my husband was like, wow, I was not trained as a science teacher so that I knew a lot of the equipment in that room, because we've been talking about how to make sure that we're aligned to that postgraduate work if necessary. And then also, I'm going to go to my notes because I've lost my visual. We've been talking about some more interdisciplinary opportunities, so that science is really, it is such an interdisciplinary field, it really aligns to everything that we do. So how can we continue to explore that and enhance that? And we're looking at how we can continue with our shared experiences aligned to the vision of the learner. We've been working on our Milford measures and trying to align to the work that we've been doing with mastery-based diploma assessment. So looking at that blueprint and thinking about how that now fits in. How does our assessment practices need to shift? How can we assure that we are accomplishing what we set out to do, which was accomplish that vision of the learner within our daily practices. So thinking about lots of future destinations in the work. We still have new units to explore, new courses to finish up. Forensics is a brand new course this year. We've learned a lot of lessons this year about that class. Our teachers have learned tremendously about fingerprinting and creating a performance-based task at the end of that unit where our kids really act like forensic scientists. It's been super exciting, but of course, we've learned a lot, so we've got to make some tweaks and continue to revise. We're really, truly never done. We're always learning, but we're at a great place where we can build upon that. So thank you so much for your time tonight. I've really had a pleasure looking at what our elementary schools are doing. Thank you, ladies, so much. That was awesome. And we'd certainly take any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. You know, it's really great when you can bring to life the work that the board has done, because we don't often get to see that, and it's very helpful. Board members, do we have questions? Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for bringing the hand. All set? Thanks. Thank you for bringing the hands-on stuff up. That was really fun. I have fourth grade twins who come home every week and say, "We were in the STEM lab today," and it makes me feel good because I'm on the Board of Ed, but also makes me feel good that we're doing that for all kids in Milford. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about assessments at various levels, because you mentioned assessments all the way throughout, and I'm just curious what assessment looks like. It's such an open-ended subject matter now, you know. What assessment looks like at the various levels. Maybe just pick like a grade in elementary school, middle, and high school, and just kind of give us an idea of what that looks like.
Sure. So we have, again, at every grade, and really in science and all our sort of, you know, and I know we've alluded to this before. So we really are working on our formative assessment pieces. So a lot of what happens is kids actually engaging in the work and teachers being able to react to kind of what kids are doing, how they're thinking, any things that they might get stuck on, and then providing them with feedback to move them forward. So it's kind of a real-time cycle that, you know, we kind of have continually going. Certainly students are able to, at the elementary level, have science notebooks and journals where they're able to reflect on their learning. They may be asked to answer or reflect on questions that have to do with what they investigated that day, so that the teacher and STEM educator can get a sense of what they need to tweak or change moving into the next lesson. At the end of each of our units, we're starting to work on, and I know Ms. Swanson alluded to this a little bit in terms of what we're doing with some of our Milford measures work, and even though MBDA is a high school requirement, we're approaching it from a pre-K-12 lens. So we're working on embedding performance assessments and shared experiences at appropriate times in the progression of each of our units and throughout the year, so that students, again, have an opportunity to really show what they know in unique and interesting ways, rather than, maybe as we've done before in the past, where we're used to necessarily in a paper and pencil test. So we're developing those with the team. Actually, in conjunction, one of the really exciting things that we alluded to that is in progress now is we're working very closely at the elementary level with the Audubon. We're actually in the process of co-creating and partnering on one of these experiences that we're hoping to bring to grade 3 next year. So that's really exciting work. Certainly at the 5th grade level, and I know Ms. Swanson alluded to the 8th and 11th grade level, our students do take the NGSS state assessment, which is a standard-based summative assessment that all students take at those points in their learning career. So that gives us, some indication of how our students are progressing throughout as well. So those are some of the examples really at the elementary school that are in place and that we're working on. And I'll let Ms. Swanson talk a little bit about middle and high.
Sure. So we continue, that's what part of the big next phase of the work, I would say, right? So we've got units, implementation guides that are consistent and cohesive. We are currently working on establishing what does assessment look like? How does assessment need to change, right? So we know we are talking about using exit slips, science journals. You know, a lot of the things Thomas just mentioned are happening at our secondary level, all the way up, of course, to a traditional AP test, which, you know, is what it is. That just is what it is. But we are working on, so for example, our new forensics course. We don't have a final exam. Like, kids are not going to sit for a test and have to identify figures and all that stuff. We have an authentic task where they evaluate a scene of a crime, and they're going to try to figure out who done it and use their evidence-based information to write up a report based on that evidence. And actually something I did not include in this was something one of the teachers shared with me, which is basically the kiddos ended up building a slide deck of why they decided who did the crime based on their different pieces of evidence. So it looks different, and we continue to think about what does assessment look like in an NGSS world. The nice thing about NGSS is there's progressions, so that we would like to shift to not thinking about really a rubric, but really about a progression of learning. So I might be, you know, in the fall, I might expect kiddos to be here in that progression around using evidence to support my reasoning, but as I move through the year, we would expect them to progress along that line, and that there's a progression for all students, and all students are somewhere along there, and our goal is to really just continue to move along that progression as a scientific thinker.
If
I
I
hope
could
that help explain something.
If I could just add one other piece to the very helpful information from both Mrs. Swanson and Dr. Nobley, something that is an effort preschool through grade 12. We've talked a little bit before about you know, formative assessment, but also assessments for deeper learning. So you would not see a traditional assessment from in our day back in school, for example, like a multiple choice assessment, right? We want to make sure that when we're assessing students, we're assessing knowledge, skills, and dispositions, but also that we're having students apply learning from multiple areas. So Dr. Nobley and I were in a classroom, a kindergarten classroom the other day, and it would look like children were playing. You might think that they were working on letters because they were writing letters. They were at a racetrack and they were writing down the names of cars that were racing. They were recording, it's reminding me of what Mrs. Swanson was just saying about students doing in the physics class. They were recording the rate and speed of the cars. It was a pushes and pulls unit, right? So that was science. There was a lot of assessment there, but it was beyond the science content. We were assessing also some literacy and numeracy. So it's a more integrated approach and an assessment for deeper learning, and that'll be a through line preschool through grade 12.
That's great, thank you. So how does that sort of, the assessments that we're doing in the classroom, how does that translate to the more standardized tests that the 5th, 8th, and 11th grade graders need to take?
Sure, so actually I just had a conversation recently with one of my teachers who was, the state releases what we call IABs, interim assessment blocks. I hate the fact that they called them that because they're called interim assessments, and I like to think them as interim tasks. And the teacher was like, I really don't like to teach to a test. Like, that's like not really what I like. And I said, well, really, that assessment is an exemplification of the standard. So you're teaching to the standards, which is what we're asking you always to do, and that is a clear understanding of what a standard is. Sometimes it's up to interpretation what a standard means. Here is a very good example of what that standard is that they're trying, and really it's actually multiple standards. No one item is one standard typically in those assessments. So we use those to help have conversations about, are we aligned? Is the work we're asking of students aligned? They're great examples and previews of what our kiddos are going to be doing. And in the middle school, while it's an 8th grade test, we've been working as a 6th, 7th, 8th grade team to look at those items and say, well, where does this fit within our units? Because it can't all stand on the shoulders of 8th grade and 11th grade, right? We're always building, so we're always looking at those as good examples of how we can teach to the standards and really use that 3-dimensional analysis, because they're doing it with in a portal that's limited, really, honestly, how you can assess a student, because it's a massive test, right? So knowing that it has limits as to how, so it's an example, but not an exemplar of how we should do it, right? It's just a good idea of how we get multiple skills measured with an assessment item. So we have those conversations, and we're really just beginning to do a lot of that work and go deep in that, now that we know our units of study and how the progression happens throughout the year.
Okay, that's great. Does IAB, is that what you called it? IAB?
Yeah.
Is that a professional tool, or do students actually look at those too?
It depends on how a teacher chooses to use it. So sometimes the students are in the portal looking at that assessment, but they also have what's called AVA, where I can project that onto my ViewSonic, and we can have a class discussion and look at that task, and it can be used as a task for learning. So we use it in a variety of ways, and we're in the process of kind of figuring out the best way to use that. What's the assured experience for our kiddos as to whether or not it's a good in-class learning whole group task? Is it a good measure at the end of a unit? Could it replace what we're looking at right now as an end of unit assessment? They usually don't fit so nicely with like our units of study because they have like science can be done in a million different ways, kind of. So
Sure.
We are constantly just looking to see how well we're aligning to what our kiddos are going to be expected to do on those assessments and helping us make those decisions cohesively.
All right, very helpful. Thank you so much.
So, and thank you as well for the notebook artifacts that were included with our agenda form. So I hope that board members noticed that there were some clickable items that you could look at, some real examples of the student work.
Yes.
Thank you for that. It was very helpful.
Those were some of our 7th graders. Yes.
And I would say those notebook samples are an opportunity for formative assessment, right? Because through those, we can kind of see evidence of student thinking, which is really important.
Right. Our teachers rely on those often. As a matter of fact, when I went and asked, like, can I get a picture? And they're like, well, they're all in our classrooms. Like, that's in the room, and there's kiddos in the room right now. Like, so they are a very valuable tool to really understand the progression of learning that students are going through. And hopefully you saw that they're making models there, right? Modeling is a huge component of NGSS. We saw an example. It looked like it was the teacher, by the way, at the front of the room, but that was actually a student leading another group of students on a consensus model. So we want there's a lot of different pieces, and how we assess that is definitely something we continue to discuss and learn about.
Thank you. Other questions from board members? Okay, I see none. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative.
Thank you. Thank you to the team that was here this evening. I really appreciate our celebration of our work. Board members, it's time to, I can't believe, discuss and decide on graduation dates. That was fast, huh? As described in the agenda form, we do have just a couple of factoids for us to put out for discussion. We do have a school year that is 181 days. It is required that we hold school for 180 days, that students complete 180 days of school. The last day of school is Monday, June 20th, because of some inclement weather that we had this year. We regularly swap from year to year which high school graduates first and which high school graduates second, and we flip-flop that. Usually, if there is inclement weather on the day of graduation, we move graduation from being an outdoor event to an indoor event. But that was not possible last year because of COVID. So we had to have an outdoor event last year. So unfortunately, foreign went first last year, was scheduled to go first last year, and law was scheduled to go second. But because of the incoming storm that evening, foreign actually graduated students after law did. So the proposal before you, board members, is to consider graduating foreign on Friday, June 17th, because they would actually graduate first this time, and to graduate seniors at law on Monday the 20th. Graduation date time to be set at 5:15 p.m. That is for your discussion and approval.
Dr. Kutaya, can we have a motion first and then we'll discuss? Mr. Fowler?
I motion that the Milford Board of Education establishes a graduation date of Friday, June 17th, 2022, and Monday, June 20th, 2022, for the senior classes of Joseph A. Boren and Jonathan Law High Schools, respectively. Graduation ceremony should begin at 5:15 p.m. for both high schools.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Okay, can we have any discussion from board members? Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you. Dr. Kutaya, just a question. Are we able to have it indoors if there's inclement weather this year?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Any other discussion from board members? I had that same question. Okay, seeing none, we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board members. We'll be sure to let our graduating classes know. So before you are a group of policies for a second read, and one particular is on our fourth read, so thank you for all your feedback. I do ask that the board consider it this evening and vote to approve these policies one by one. So first one is the 5144.2, use of exclusionary timeout settings.
Mr. Fowler, do you have a motion?
I do. I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 5144.2, use of exclusionary timeout setting as presented.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Do we have discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board members. Let's move on to 4118.11, non-discrimination. This has no additional changes, is same as it was before you last time.
Mr. Fowler, do you have a motion?
I do. I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 4118.11, non-discrimination as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Ratner seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board members. Moving on to 5131.91, hazing. The policy is before you as written.
Mr. Fowler, do you have a motion?
I do. I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 5131.91, hazing as presented.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board members. Before you is 5131.911, bullying prevention and intervention / teen dating violence. We did make that change in the title as requested. We also have before you on your table a replacement for page 8 of 13, so please view that instead of the one in your packet. Numerous changes were made based on your feedback. We're happy to have discussion on those changes.
Mr. Fowler, do you have a motion?
I do. I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 5131.911, bullying prevention and intervention as presented.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Do we have discussion? Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. Thank you for the changes to the various sections on this policy. It's a very complicated policy. I would just like to voice, I will support as written, but voice support for our board investigating a cyberbullying policy that covers exclusively cyberbullying as opposed to being under the heading of bullying in this particular policy. So at a later date, if that's something that we could consider, I think that would be beneficial.
Thank you, Mr. DeYoung. I'll make a note of that. Any other discussion on this policy? Ms. Doyle?
Sorry, can you just give me a little bit more detail on the Safe School Climate Plan? I know that's technically not, but I know there's new, that came beforehand. Okay, thank you.
That is also covered in cross policies.
Any other discussion or questions? Ms. Petrosky, did you have anything on this policy? You all good? All right. So I see no other discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And lastly, board members, we're considering 6115, ceremonies and observances, no change from the last read.
Do you have a motion, Mr. Fowler?
I do. I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 6115, ceremonies and observances as presented.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, board members. Ms. Glennon, I'd like to move the next two items over to Ms. Faustish and Mr. Riccitelli. We are going to have a food service mid-year financial report, as well as a healthy food certification and food exemption, which will require Board of Education action this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Tonight I'm here to talk about the food service financial situation. And I'm happy to report that we're in good financial shape. It has been challenging, as you know, the past few years, but this year continues to be challenging. We've had a lot of expenses due to supply chain issues. That's been our biggest challenge, but we are in a position where we are, I do expect to be in the black. I do not expect to lose money at all. We will definitely be in the black. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that we are continuing our program where we can feed all students free of charge. So our participation has increased tremendously. We're serving more than 700 more breakfasts a day and 700 lunches more a day. And when I say more, I'm actually looking back at our last full normal, quote unquote normal normal school year, which was the 2018-19 school year. So back in that year, we served about 300 breakfasts a day. Now we're serving over 1,000. Also back in 2018-19, we were serving 2,400 students a day. We're serving 3,200 a day for lunch. So those are huge increases in participation, which is really, really a great thing. I think families are taking advantage of the free meals. It's a good way to save money and feed their kids nutritiously. And of course, it helps us financially because we have increased participation. There's a couple of other things that have been positive this year financially. The USDA federally funds our program, and we had reimbursement rates that were lower than they are this year. We are participating in the seamless summer option is what it's called. But what's important to know about the seamless summer option, that we can provide free meals to all students for breakfast and lunch, we are actually getting almost we're getting almost $1 more per meal for every meal that we serve. So not only do we not have to collect the money from parents for lunch, we are actually getting even more than we ever did before, like a full $1 more for lunch, which is huge. So it really does help us financially. And we need the help financially because it has been so expensive, and because we had some losses a couple of years ago with the closing down for the pandemic. So it really does help us have money in the bank so that we can obviously pay our bills, but also have a cushion for next year, because the bad news is, even though we've done well financially this year, the bad news is that so far they have not approved us to continue free meals for all next year. So we would go back to working under the program, the National School Meal Program, which would give us less reimbursement, and we would only be giving free meals to those who qualify for free meals. We would go back to charging students for their meals. So in that case, we would expect that some participation would fall off. So I don't have a crystal ball of what it's going to look like next year, but I'm hoping to get a really good cushion this year so that we have a cushion for next year. So, so that's the good and the bad news, but I think it is mostly good news. So does anyone have any questions about the financial report?
Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Faustich. So the free meals for all will end at the end of the school year?
Yes, June 30th.
And will we be participating in the summer program again or no?
No, we won't be participating in the summer program.
Okay. Do you have a sense of what it would cost locally to continue that program if we weren't being reimbursed by the federal government?
I'd have to do a calculation on that, but it wouldn't be feasible. We have, in the district, we have like 25% of the students are free and reduced eligible, and the rest, so we would get full reimbursement, say it's $3.70 a meal for those students. The other students we get reimbursed for, but it's at the last time we were participating in this, in the school meal program reimbursement, it's 37 cents. So really, we're going to have to be charging, we have to charge the difference basically to make up for that, and it's just not feasible with the percentage of free and reduced that we have in this district.
So it's not feasible with the budget that you currently have. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. It's not an immediate need, but is it possible for you to figure out what that number would be, what the cost of that would be?
Sure.
That'd be great.
What does lunch cost, Ms. Faustich?
Well, the last lunch prices we had ranged from like $3 to $3.50 the students would pay. So, and next year we may have to we will definitely have to increase those prices, probably somewhere between 25 and 50 cents a meal. So.
I'm sorry, did you say $3.50?
So that's what they currently were from a couple of years ago. We haven't charged any students for their meals. So it would really be, we're looking at probably an extra $3 to $3.50 per student per meal that we would have to come up with.
So fast math, Mr. DeYoung, $3 a student. About 4,000 of our students do not qualify for free and reduced lunch. So 3 times 4,000 is $12,000 a day for 180 days.
Okay. Appreciate it. I think that number will suffice, so no need to go back and figure that out. Thank you, Dr.
And that's just for lunch?
I'm not a math person, so.
That's just for lunch, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Understood. The other question I had for you goes back a few years now, and I know you've been focused on many other things besides this, so I want to just, couch that first. I think in 2019, we were talking about styrofoam trays. And so I was hoping you have an update, although I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't, so it's okay if you don't, but I just wanted to see where we were with that.
No, I do have that. I do recall that.
Excellent.
Definitely, it's still on the radar. We have been moving away from styrofoam. We've been pretty much using a lot of paper because that's what we could purchase this year. It really was whatever the supplier had for us.
Sure.
I would like to make that change, and that's what I would move forward with for the fall. Hoping things will return to some, the supply chain issues will be lessened. However, that is going to be a little bit more of a cost for us. Like right now, our costs are pretty much double what they were in the past for our paper supplies. So instead of spending maybe $60,000 a year on paper supplies, we're already spending probably by the end of the year it'll be $120,000. So it would be at least that moving forward. So, but I definitely have that on my on the radar to incorporate into our expenses for the future years.
I appreciate you keeping it on your radar. I know you've been having other things on your radar for the last few years, so thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Doyle?
Hi, thank you. How would you say the quality of the meals have been in comparison to earlier, knowing that we have more people more students who are taking advantage of these meals, and you know that you're going to get reimbursed at a rate that's consistent and at a higher rate than previously? Have we been able to, I know you have to fit within the guidelines of within the healthy meals within that. Do you think A, is cost a factor, and students can get it because it's free, and then B, is it a better quality and they're more interested in what the food is available?
Well, we certainly plan the meals to meet the guidelines, but also to meet the students' needs and desires, and bring fresh fruits and vegetables and produce, those types of things, and milk to their every day. I do think that having it free helps, and if everyone's having lunch and breakfast, then it encourages more students to participate. With the supply chain issues we've had, a lot of times it may not be my first choice, certain items, but we try to purchase what we can and good quality as well. Sometimes this year, most of the time this year, it's, we order what we want to put on the menu, and then maybe half of it comes in, or a lot of things are substituting. So I actually have spent more time on that than I am being creative to bring new items. And I just, go pray that we get food this week, or then we have to find other alternatives for the menu. So it's really been not a time for my most creative thought process, but I enjoy having that kind of more income, obviously, so I can bring in other more expensive items.
Great, thank you. And then I just have another comment. So we just spent the whole class talking about science and things like that. And is there an opportunity to collaborate with the students in like a community garden at some point, or to use some of those items in some way? I know it's probably very low on the list of many things you're dealing with.
It really isn't low on the list. I would love to do something like that. And I have been doing some research, but it hasn't come forward, but I would be open to that, definitely.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Faustich, do you see the supply chain issues lightening up at all, or do you anticipate they're going to continue for some time now?
Well, I am told that I think we're going to continue. They're going to continue. I do think they're going to continue. One of the things I think, now that, I think things have gotten a little better 3/4 of the way through the school year, and our participation has gone up, as well as it has gone up in other, nationwide. We're all doing free meals for all. I think it's been a really positive thing, and the vendors and manufacturers are catching up. There's fewer issues than there used to be at the beginning of the school year. I really wish this would continue, because I feel like we're getting to a point where things are getting better, but if we all go back to having students pay for meals every day, then I think our participation will fall, and then it will be another adjustment. It'll just add to the issues that we've had, because it'll affect the supply chain and probably be more costly. So I think we are in for another challenging year.
Okay, thank you for your honesty. Do we have any other questions for Ms. Faustich?
Ms. Gledden?
Yes.
If I could just jump in very quickly, and you've heard me say this before, the work that Eileen and her team did, particularly in the first year of the pandemic and that first summer, was really monumental. I have to say, this past year with the supply chain issues, it really was a day-to-day thing. Eileen would come to me in the morning and say, "We're not getting our delivery today. I don't know what I'm going to give the kids," but she would always find a way to get it done. But it was real, and it was a daily challenge. So Eileen, I want to thank you for the work that you and your team has done. The last thing that I'll say is that Eileen gave the good news, and there's a ton of good news. But I just have to sound the alarm, because I see rocky roads ahead for us next year. We all know the inflation rate and the cost of food has gone up so high. And when those free meals go away and that participation rate goes down, the only way to make that difference up is to raise prices, which then lowers participation even further. So I know Eileen is going to be as creative as she can be, but I believe that we're going to be in for some unprecedented challenges that food service throughout the United States hasn't faced for a long time. So I don't want to end Eileen's report on a sour note, but I just want the board to be aware that it could be rocky ahead. So, and last thing I'll say is lobby your representatives to continue that the free meals, particularly our federal representatives. So make those phone calls.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Riccitelli. Perhaps going into the next year, you can just peripherally keep us updated a little bit more frequently than on this situation. I know we normally get a twice a year report from food services, so just keep us in the loop.
Will do. We'll probably need to let you know what's happening before the school year starts.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can we move to the certification?
Yes. Mr. DeYoung, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Riccitelli said. So, what is the recourse for that, right? If we get halfway through the year, for instance, and we're way in a deficit on the food service budget. I know we've talked about this in the past about our board making it up, and that's generally not done. What recourses do we have?
If there is truly a deficit and we're not able to make it up, the board has an obligation to we have to feed the children. We have an obligation to do that. So somehow we would have to figure that out. Let's hope it doesn't get to that point. There's challenges ahead.
But there is an option. If the worst case were to happen, there is an option for the board to step in.
It has to come out of our general budget.
Right. Sure.
We'd have to do a freeze, hold other accounts frozen, and fill the hole.
Right. Okay. Appreciate it.
Ms. Fosdick?
Okay, moving on to the healthy food certification. This is an opportunity that that the board has chosen to have the school district participate in. It is the healthy food certification, where we agree to participate in the program and meet certain guidelines and standards for nutrition and what we sell at the school during the school day. In all areas, whether it's the cafeteria or anywhere else on campus. And the board is required to vote on it every year, whether Milford will or will not participate. It also has the option of exempting certain events and under certain criteria, so that if you want to sell foods and beverages outside of the school day on, say, for example, at a football game or a concert, you can exempt those events. In general, you can vote to exempt those events so that they don't have to meet this criteria.
So this is something that the board has participated in for many years.
Yes.
And there's a financial incentive, correct?
Yes, that's there is a financial incentive. We get 10 cents per meal for all the meals we sell in the prior year. By participating, we get that amount of money every year. So it's probably worth somewhere between $50,000 or $60,000 a year for our program.
So the fact that we've sold more meals this year because of the federal, that will be a benefit to us.
Yes,
it's a little bit of a bonus.
We should actually increase what we get next year by participating in this. Exactly. It all is reflective of how many meals we do sell.
Okay. Board members, do we have questions on this program? Okay, we have two motions that we have to adopt. They're lengthy motions, so bear with Mr. Fowler.
I motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the implementation of the healthy food option pursuant to CGS Section 10-215F that certifies all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, and schools. Public schools include all public schools, regional educational service centers, the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System, CTECS, charter schools, inter-district magnet schools, and endowed academies. Page 2 of 3, Connecticut State Department of Education cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups. Can I read the second motion?
No, that's a separate one.
Okay.
Is there a second for this motion?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner has seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the second motion, Mr. Fowler.
A motion that the Milford Board of Education will move to allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. 1. The sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2. The sale is at the location of the event. And 3. The food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held. It must be the same place as the food and beverage sales.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Ms. Ratner. Is there any discussion on this motion? This is the exemption. Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frostich.
Thank you very much for approving this, and I do believe we will be financially sustainable in the future.
Thank you for your hard work and your
you.
staff's hard work.
So we'd like to move on to the approval of Phase 3 security projects. Will require the board's action this evening. I'll turn things over to Mr. Riccitelli.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kutaya, Mrs. Glenn, and members of the board. As you know, we have been doing the hardening vestibules, or increasing the security at the vestibules for each of our schools in a phased-in process. The schools that we're approving tonight are actually Phase 3, and then we're beginning Phase 4 this next summer. But these projects are complete. They were basically done last summer and then completed throughout the school year. The Permanent School Facilities Building Committee has accepted them, and it's a requirement of the state reimbursement grant procedure that your board officially approve them as 100% complete.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Riccitelli. So we have 5 separate motions to make. Mr. Fowler, we'll go one by one.
I motion that the Milford Board of Education accepts the security upgrade project, Hardin Entranceway at John F. Kennedy Elementary School, State Project 084-210-A as 100% complete.
Is there a second?
I second.
Ms. Ratner seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mathewson, Mr. Fowler?
Yep. Motion that the Milford Board of Education accepts the security upgrade project Hardin Entranceway at Mathewson Elementary School, State Project 084-212-A, as 100% complete.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next.
Motion that the Milford Board of Education accepts the security upgrade project Hardin Entranceway at Orange Avenue Elementary School, State Project 084-209-A, as 100% complete.
Is there a second?
I second.
Ms. Ratner is seconded. Any motion, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next.
A motion that the Milford Board of Education accepts the security upgrade project Hardin Entranceway at East Shore Middle School, State Project 084-208-A, as 100% complete.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner is seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And last but not least.
A motion that the Milford Board of Education accepts the security upgrade project Hardin Entranceway at Joseph A. Foreign High School, State Project 084-211-A, as 100% complete.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Ratner seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Board.
Thank you, and we invite Ms. Kapazna to provide us with the Human Resources Report.
Thank you. Sorry. This month you have, as always, the listing of the personnel changes, including job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I want to mention we're holding steady at 11 retirements for the year, so that's good news. And of course, we do expect towards the end of the year we will get more, but that's good news for financial reasons, obviously.
Do we have questions on the Human Resources Report for Ms. Kapazna? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Riccitelli will be providing us with the disbursement report and the quarterly budget report.
Sure. Thank you. And members of the board, in your package is a listing of all of the disbursements for the district over the amount of $1,500 for the month of March. Those items that are COVID related, you've asked to be highlighted in yellow, and they are. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the report.
See, the yellow highlights are starting to decrease a little bit.
Yes.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Riccitelli? Okay, I see none.
Okay, thank you. And the quarterly budget report. As you know, this is the end of the third quarter, so 75% of the year finished. And this report, as I give it to you tonight, is a little bit different than the ones that I've given in the past, in that we truly do have some challenges this year. And those, I'll go through them individually, but the challenges are basically due to three things. One is the residual effects of COVID. Two is the inflation and the higher cost of items that we're purchasing at this time. And number three, the cost of fuel, both gasoline, diesel, and heating fuel, natural gas. So I'll go through the items, and of course I'm here to answer any questions that you have. I'll just highlight the ones that I think bear need to be brought to your attention. The first one, it's not in a deficit, but 1111 certified teachers. That's our biggest account in the budget, and as you can see, we're running very close which is also a little bit different than in past years. But we do believe that we will be fine and we'll be okay in that account. Account 1112, homebound tutors. So we have a substantial deficit that we're running there, and that is basically due to some of the social, emotional, mental health issues that we're experiencing in the schools. Dr. Fedigan, I don't know if you just want to touch on that for a second, the reason why that cost is so high.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Riccitelli. So as you know, our students and staff have experienced tremendous struggle due to the effects of the COVID pandemic. We have students reintegrating into our classrooms now in a very different way than they have experienced the last 2 years. And we're very grateful that we have our school counseling department who continue to work on the development of a comprehensive school counseling curriculum. But we have had a number of student behaviors and really some unusual circumstances that we can't discuss that might reveal individual student names, and we have to protect confidentiality, but a number of unusual disciplinary issues to respond to in the past year. So we anticipate, again, having proactive strategies in the year ahead, but this was, there was a lot of reactive and responsive measures to support our students during a very challenging time.
Thank you, Dr. Fedigan.
You're welcome.
So if we can move down to account 1117, teacher substitutes, and the deficit there is something that we've talked about before. Because of COVID, we've gone to building substitutes this year. So the combination of building substitutes and raising the pay for substitutes in order to attract, to keep our buildings open and running during those high COVID peak times. That's why we have a deficit in that account. And moving down 1126, cafeteria aids, same thing, COVID related. Overtime salaries, ditto. COVID costs. The biggest cost to our overtime was the additional areas that we had to set up each day, set up and break down each day to have lunch and still maintain the social distancing. As you know, we couldn't have lunch in the cafeterias until recently, and so that was a huge cost to set gymnasiums up and break them down every day, multiple times, and the additional cleaning that we did in the schools. So that's why the overtime salaries. Now, I will say that we always have a plan on how we're going to cover these, and some of these we will be using ARP or ESSER grant funds. So there may be a mitigation by the end of the year. Those, we may have applied grant funds to some of these to cover them, but at this time we're still showing the deficit, and we would prefer to use those ARP funds for other things. But of course, if we need to, we have every right to, and it's a responsible use of the grant money. So if we need to, we will. Ms. Capazna talked about account 1130, retirements. So you see that there's a decent surplus there because we've only encumbered the amount of 11 to this point. So we're hoping that we don't get, our average is 18, and that's what we budget for. So, hopefully that will continue, and we may have some surplus in that account. Let's hope. And now moving down, accounts 4100 and 4101. These are our two biggest issues at this time, and directly, if you recall, dating back to when we talked about the budget assumptions, we talked about how our forecasters, our consultants were talking about how this was going to rise so dramatically. And then world events have certainly not helped in this area. So I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise to the members of the board, but we're running a substantial deficit in both electricity and in the natural gas category. Normally, I'll just give you a little preview. Normally, we come to the board in June and July for transfers. We will probably be in front of you in May to transfer those areas where we know we're going to be in deficit. So we'll need to do that a little bit earlier this year. So I just want to make you aware of that. So on to the second page. The 4307 maintenance supplies, that's in a deficit mainly due to the increased cleaning, but in addition, the increased cost of custodial supplies and maintenance supplies. The deficits in special education transportation don't worry us because those are they're reimbursable by the excess cost grants. So we're in good shape in the special ed areas. 5107, same thing. The fuel for the buses, we're in deficit there, and we'll end the year in a deficit. Uninsured coverage, 5202. I keep telling you, don't worry about this one. There's still recurring costs that we'll recoup from insurance because of the flood at Harborside. So we still haven't completed that claim. We're fully back up and running in the areas that were flooded, but we still have some costs that bills haven't come in or they haven't paid for yet. So that deficit should be mostly covered. I'll bring your attention to account 6000 because this is one that normally is not on the is normally not on your quarterly report. We used to do a freeze account each year in case we had issues at the end of the year, but this year we haven't done that in the past few years, and we haven't had to. But this year we do see the need for a freeze account. So we froze funds in the 6,000s, 7,000s, and 8,000s accounts. And so that's money that we have frozen. If we get to the end of the year and we're able to free that up, we will return that to whatever accounts it came out of. But right now, we thought that that was the prudent thing to do, looking forward to what might be a deficit in other accounts. And the same thing in account 8,000. There's a freeze account in the 8,000s accounts. That's on the third page. And we've frozen about $50,000 there. So I think that's what I want to highlight for you. As you can see, the bottom line, right now we're projecting a deficit of $461,000. But again, with some of the measures that we're taking and the possibility of using grant funds, we will end the year with a balanced budget. And more to come at the May, June, and July meetings. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from board members on the financials? I had just a quick question on line 3231, mental health services.
Yes.
Is that staff or students?
That is contracted services. Oh, that's for students.
For students.
Yes.
Any questions from board members?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya.
Thank you.
We move on to consent agenda. Mr. Fowler.
The motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda items, consideration of minutes, March 14th, 2022 business meeting, and March 28th, 2022 committee of the whole meeting.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Ms. Ratner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board comment? Ms. Ratner.
I'd like to congratulate Milford for its first robotic competition and the excitement that all have gone through. And it made me think of way back when we had Olympics of the Mind or Odyssey of the Mind and the problem solving and the consideration of decision making and critical thinking, creative thinking. It just was, I was jumping out of my skin. Terrific. The outstanding AP seminars, presentations, awesome. The family music nights and parent university, marvelous. Good things happening here in Milford. I love that the Connecticut Art Administration Association did so well too, and those wonderful theater productions. Congratulations to our school system. Thank you.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I just want to take the moment to congratulate my niece, Caroline, who was named as the governor of New England and Bermuda for the Key Club, and I'm very proud of her, and I have to laugh as our last meeting in law. It's 20 years ago today. I was a junior at Jonathan Law, and I think about the opportunities that she has and the other students at our schools, and I'm really proud of our district and where we're going, and it's great to see these opportunities that didn't exist when I was here 20 years ago. And I can't wait to see where all our students come from, go to, rather, and to hear the students this afternoon, or earlier, talk about where they're going and what's going on in schools. It's great to hear about the new opportunities that exist, because if you don't see what's out there, you can't see what you don't do. So I really appreciate that. So thank you. And congratulations, Caroline.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Any other comments from board members? Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. I just think it's important that we take a minute to thank Ms. Glennon and Mr. Fowler and Ms. Petrosky for their efforts in allowing us to get back in person, meeting in person. I think we take it kind of for granted at this point that we're able to be here. Certainly there was staff involvement and administration involvement as well, but there was a lot of uncertainty around whether we'd be able to do it. And through your leadership, I think it's been really important that we've been back in person. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge that, and I'm looking forward to being back in person. So thank you for doing that as well.
Thank you, Mr. DeYoung. Any other board comment? I attended the plays as well. I went to Freaky Friday on Friday, and I went here at Jonathan Law, and I went to Mamma Mia at Foreign the following night. It was a very theatrical weekend, and the productions were fabulous. You know, these students, they had not done a production in 2 years. I took note of the fact that so many of them were freshmen, and even the upperclassmen, the juniors, was their first time in a production for Foreign, because the beginning of their high school careers, we were in a pandemic, but they rose to the occasion. They were high quality performances. You know, they went off, the ones I saw went off without a glitch, and I'm just really so proud of them. It's a great bonding experience for the kids. And I do just want to take one last opportunity to thank the staff at Jonathan Law for hosting us. I'll be sure to send off a personal note to Mr. Darcy for his staff. Blessing, I know, Blessing, our tech person, it's been a challenge for you to have to be here every month. I know Blessing said he's looking forward to getting back to Parsons as well. So thank you for all the extra work that everybody had to put in order to host us here at Jonathan Law. We do appreciate it. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Is there any objections to an adjournment? Seeing none, we will adjourn at 8:46. Thank you, board members. We'll see you in 2 weeks at Parsons.